It was supposed to be a quiet morning on the Miller farm. The sun had just begun to rise over the golden fields, casting long shadows across the dew-covered grass. Jack, a seasoned farmer in his late 50s, stepped out onto his porch with a mug of coffee, expecting another ordinary day. But what he saw made the cup slip from his hand. A lion, a full-grown male lion, not pacing, not roaring, just sitting, right in front of his barn door. It didn't move, didn't growl, didn't blink. It simply stared at the house, at Jack, with an unnerving stillness that sent chills down his spine. No fences were broken, no blood, just that massive creature, as if it had chosen to be there. By noon, neighbors had gathered from a distance, phones out, fear growing, but the lion didn't leave. And no one, not even Jack, understood why. Jack Miller stood motionless in the middle of his cornfield, the tall golden stalk swaying gently in the afternoon breeze, like waves rolling across a golden sea. He squinted against the light, eyes fixed on the silhouette at the edge of his property. The lion was still there, a full-grown male with a thick, dusty mane and massive shoulders, stood firm in front of the old barn. He didn't pace, he didn't roar, he didn't show his teeth. He just stood there, silent, immobile, like a sentinel carved out of stone. From the ridge near the Miller farm, a few concerned neighbors had parked their trucks, binoculars raised, whispering nervously. Someone mentioned calling animal control. Someone else suggested tranquilizers. Jack heard none of it. He couldn't take his eyes off the lion. The creature's presence should have sent him running. But Jack didn't move. He didn't even flinch. There was something in that lion's eyes, something Jack couldn't explain. It wasn't hunger. It wasn't rage. It wasn't fear either. No, it was something deeper, something closer to pleading. A quiet desperation wrapped in wild majesty. Jack took a slow step forward. The wind shifted slightly, carrying with it the sharp scent of sun-baked fur and dust. The lion didn't react. No twitch, no sound. Just that same unwavering stare, as if he were waiting for Jack to understand something that couldn't be said with words. From behind Jax, the old border collie who usually barked at squirrels, whimpered softly and stayed glued to Jack's leg. He too sensed something strange. This wasn't a normal standoff. This wasn't predator and prey. It was something else entirely. And as the sun dipped lower behind the barn, casting long shadows across the fields, Jack's heart began to race. Not out of fear, but out of a gnawing, undeniable sense that this lion hadn't come to threaten. It had come to ask. As the sun began to lower, painting the sky in hues of amber and rose, Jack took a deep breath and stepped forward. The dry grass crunched softly beneath his boots as he approached the barn, his heart pounding louder with every step. The lion didn't move. It remained there, still as a monument, its powerful frame silhouetted against the fading light. But it was the eyes, those amber, glowing eyes that held Jack in place more than anything else. They weren't the eyes of a beast about to strike. They were watching, waiting, asking. Not once did the lion blink. Not once did it growl. Jack stopped just 20 feet away, unsure whether to speak or retreat, but something inside him, an instinct he couldn't name, kept him rooted there. It felt like standing before something ancient. Not wild, not tame, but wise, mysterious. "Are you trying to tell me something?" Jack whispered, half to himself, half to the creature. The lion tilted its head, just slightly. Its tail didn't swish. Its paws didn't shift. It simply looked at him, the way a man might look at another when words have failed, but urgency remains. It was surreal. Jack thought of the old stories his father once told him, of animals that knew more than they showed, of instincts that ran deeper than speech, and in that moment he realized this wasn't an accident. This lion hadn't wandered here by chance. It had come for a reason. Somewhere beneath all that muscle and fur was a message, a secret, and Jack, just a humble farmer, had somehow been chosen to receive it. What was it the lion wanted him to find? He didn't know yet, but he was about to step closer to the truth than anyone in that town ever had. If you're still with us on this incredible journey, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, because what happens next will leave you breathless. Jack's boots crunched softly on the dry earth as he inched past the lion. His hands trembled, his breath shallow. Every fiber of his body screamed that he was too close, too exposed. But the lion didn't growl, didn't bare its teeth. Instead, it stepped back just once, opening the way to the barn. That single gesture told Jack everything he needed to know. Go inside. The air within the barn was thick, heavy with dust, the scent of old hay and something else. Something faintly metallic. Blood. It took a moment for Jack's eyes to adjust. Shadows clung to the wooden beams like drapes, and the silence was broken only by the distant rustle of wind through the cornfield. Then he saw it. Curled in the corner of the barn, barely visible beneath the edge of a tattered blanket of straw, was a lion cub. Tiny, motionless, its golden fur matted and stained. Its chest rose and fell so faintly, Jack wasn't sure if it was alive. One paw twitched slightly. The cub's eyes were shut tight, as if it didn't have the strength to open them. Jack fell to his knees. His throat tightened. He didn't need to ask questions. The answer was clear, painfully clear. This was the lion's cub, and the father had brought him here, had brought Jack here, not to scare, not to threaten, but to beg. Outside, the lion remained still, casting a massive shadow through the open barn door. He didn't move, but Jack could feel his presence, a silent force, filled with worry, love, and the last flicker of hope. What kind of creature brings its wounded child to a man? What kind of father places the fate of its bloodline in human hands? The kind that knows it has no other choice. Jack gently reached out, touching the cub's tiny side. It was warm, but barely. The pulse was weak. There was no time to waste. Jack scooped the small body into his arms, careful not to jostle its injuries. The lion outside gave a soft, low exhale. Not a growl, not a warning, just a sound of relief. Jack had never studied animal medicine. He couldn't name the bones in a lion's leg or prescribe the right antibiotic for a wild injury. He was just a man with calloused hands and a heart shaped by years of raising animals, fixing fences, and respecting the land. And yet, in that moment, cradling a barely breathing lion cub against his chest, he knew he had no choice but to try. The adult lion remained at the barn's threshold, its massive frame blocking out the fading light. There was no sound from him, no growl, no tension in his muscles, just stillness, as if the beast had handed over the one thing it cared about most, to a man. Jack glanced over his shoulder as he stood up, the cub wrapped gently in his flannel coat. The lion's amber eyes didn't waver. There was no rage in them, only trust, only pain. What kind of wild animal allows a human to touch its wounded young? What force holds back instinct when every nerve must be screaming to protect? Whatever it was, it stopped the lion from lunging. It let him follow, silent and ghost-like, as Jack made his way through the tall grass toward the farmhouse. Step by step, Jack could hear the soft crunch of paws behind him. Not threatening, just present, just watching. It was one of the strangest scenes the earth had ever witnessed. A man carrying a dying cub in his arms, and a full-grown lion, the king of predators, following behind. Not to hunt, not to harm, but to hope. When Jack reached the porch, he hesitated. The door creaked open. He stepped inside. The lion stopped at the first step, sat down and stared. The line between the wild and the human had blurred. Instinct had bowed to something greater, the raw, desperate plea of a father who had nothing left but faith. As Jack laid the cub down by the fireplace and reached for towels, he looked through the window one more time. The lion was still there, unmoving, watching, waiting. Night fell over the Miller farm like a heavy curtain. The distant hum of crickets faded into silence as darkness swallowed the cornfields. Inside the modest farmhouse, the only source of light was the fire flickering in the hearth, casting long, soft shadows across the worn wooden floor. Jack knelt beside the cub, now nestled in a wool blanket near the warmth of the flames. He worked with quiet urgency, cleaning its wounds with warm, damp cloths, checking for signs of swelling, infection, or broken bones. With hands that had delivered calves and mended broken wings, he gently dribbled sugar water into the cub's mouth through a plastic syringe, hoping it would be enough to coax life back into its fragile body. Outside, the lion did not move. He sat at the edge of the porch, silent, still, and impossibly dignified. The wind rustled the tall grass behind him, but he didn't flinch. His golden eyes never left the window. He didn't growl. He didn't roar. He didn't demand anything. He just waited, like a father keeping vigil, like a monument carved by desperation and love. Jack stole glances through the glass between treatments, expecting the lion to disappear into the night at any moment, but he never did. Hour after hour, he remained seated, shoulders strong, head high, yet radiating a quiet pain. Jack whispered to the cub, though it never stirred. He encouraged it, pleaded with it, even prayed aloud once. Not to God, but to whatever part of the world still believed in miracles. His eyes burned with exhaustion, but he wouldn't leave its side. And every time he looked out that window, the lion was still there. It was a night that defied everything Jack thought he knew about the wild. A night that blurred the lines between man and beast, fear and trust, nature and compassion. He didn't know if the cub would survive until morning, but he knew this. The lion outside had entrusted him with its heart without a single sound, and Jack would not betray that trust. Not tonight. As the first light of dawn crept through the window, Jack was still sitting beside the fire, eyes heavy, heart aching. Then, barely a whisper in the silence, the cub stirred. A faint twitch, a shallow breath. It was alive. Jack's breath caught in his throat. Hope surged through him like fire. Outside, the lion stood up, as if he had felt it too. Slowly, Jack opened the door. No words were spoken. None were needed. The lion stepped forward, his massive form framed by the morning light. He leaned in gently, picked up his cub with a tenderness that didn't match his size, and paused. For one moment, just one, he looked Jack in the eye. A look filled with gratitude, trust, understanding. Then with silent grace, he turned and disappeared into the field of gold, leaving behind not just paw prints, but a story that would echo forever. But if you think that's where it ends, think again. Because what happened just a few weeks later will leave you absolutely speechless. Subscribe now so you don't miss the next chapter of this unbelievable true story.